It's Clemson Hate Week. We are back. Only had to come down to Tampa, Florida to have working internet, but we are back. What's at stake this Saturday in Clemson, South Carolina? We get into it and more. Locked On Gamecocks continues and starts up next.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. You guys might have forgotten about me. It's been a touch-and-go month of November, but we have a great show for you, and we are back. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Gamecocks. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, guys, we are a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team almost every day. Almost every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. How am I out of breath already at the start of the show? Remember, you can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Let's get into the show. Let's kick right into it. Welcome into Clemson Hate Week. Have you hated someone from Clemson today? I have. I met my girlfriend's brother, who is a Clemson grad, and had some words with him about what's at stake this weekend in Clemson, South Carolina. I think it was a Memorial Stadium. I don't even know. It's fake Death Valley. But what's at stake? Let's start off with the basics. In-state rivalry. Battle for the Palmetto State. Big Thursday, as they used to call it growing up, a long, long time ago. Some of you guys might be too young for that. There's a lot at stake, especially with pride and all the in-state bragging rights and all that kind of stuff. Everyone in the state, you're either Clemson or you're South Carolina. There's really no in between, and everyone knows that. And it is a big, big weekend because this is a weekend where I think a lot of Clemson fans thought, like last year especially, oh, you know what? It's a return to order. We're going to win. We had that fluke that happened in Clemson a couple of years ago. This won't happen again. We're ready to go. And they have I think it was like 16-7 or some low scoring game, I think. Now you have this year, and there's a lot on the line. There's in-state bragging rights. There's battles for recruits in-state. Putting up a fence around your state, no matter what state you're in, is a very, very big deal. It's a very, very big deal. But bigger than just that is the fact that looming around the corner is a potential shot at the college football. The other thing that's at stake, this is something I brought up weeks ago. Not a lot of you were happy with me when I did. That's fine. I think I prefaced it by saying don't kill the messenger. So don't kill the messenger. But there's a playoff bid potentially at stake. Here's the thing. When we started talking about this a couple weeks ago, one of the things that was brought up was it was a small chance. It's a small chance that South Carolina was going to be able to make the playoff with, the 3 losses, and they had like all the things that were in front of them that had to happen. I said it on here. I was going through it, and I said, I was like, listen, there is a path. And I started reading off the Brad Crawford tweet and going over all the things that had to happen. And that was like a laundry list, like a kid's Christmas wish list that just didn't stop. And at the end of it, I even said, I was like, I wish I didn't bring that up because I feel like it's not possible. But here's the thing. It is. And all the things that have had to happen for South Carolina to get there so far have happened. Now you need to win out this game, right? You need to win this game. But everything else that had to happen has happened so far. All right, we paused a couple of times. So I don't remember exactly where we were, but let's just get back into this. We brought this up. All the things that had to have happened for South Carolina to make the college football playoff have happened. Like Bama lost, Ole Miss lost. Now, there's a case that you can make for Ole Miss that if they're 9-3 and they've beaten South Carolina, then sure, the results on the field have to matter. The committee has tried to somewhat say that. At least people around the committee have said it. But there's just this overwhelming feeling and this groundswell of support. It's a phrase I keep using over and over and over again, that even if, like, South Carolina has the current longest active winning streak out of any team in the SEC. It's 5, which is wild, but like that's still the case. So if that's the case, and they have a 5-game winning streak, it's longer than any other team in the SEC, I know they played an FCS team on Saturday, but they beat the brakes off of them. You saw the way they beat A&M. You've seen the way they beat these other teams. You barely lose. Like the case that they have made for these other teams, like, oh, it's a quality loss, it's a close loss, it's blah, blah, blah. All of those same cases can be made for South Carolina. There's 3 losses. However, most of those losses were very, very close losses. They were losses in terms of, like, what's the best way to put it? Like, you lost by 2 points on the road, right? Like everyone knows how big of a deal and how big of an impact SEC officiating has become this season. Like, there's just no other way around it. And that loss to LSU is like pretty excusable. Also, all of those losses came early in the season. And again, you've done nothing but win convincingly since then. So I've said this before, and I will say it again. The idea that South Carolina can make the playoff is a pretty, I'm not saying it's a better shot to make it than not. What I am saying is this. We've talked about this for 3 weeks. The first week we talked about there's a 14% chance they would make it. 14%, not great, right? There was like 20. Following week, it was 14. Last week, it was 12. As I said, all the things that had to happen happened. The ESPN All-State Playoff Predictor, if they win out, this now for South Carolina, 58%. 58%. It's a really big deal. And making the playoffs as a 9-3 team and the only 9-3 deserving team from this conference, there's one thing that I think is very true from all this, is that the SEC is going to try to get as many teams in as possible. The Big Ten has 4 locks: Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State all have a 98% chance or better to get into the playoff. The SEC is not going to want to feel left behind and held out of the playoff, right? Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, all with overwhelmingly positive chances or odds to get in. Georgia's like over 90%. Tennessee, I think, is over their 70%. As long as they beat Vandy, they're in. And you have Texas, which is whatever. Because if Texas loses this weekend, they might be out. But that being said, you've seen Greg Sankey try to go to bat for the SEC and say, listen, we want a guaranteed 4 teams in. That's one of the reasons they're going to go to 14 teams. He wants a guarantee that, hey, listen, we're getting this many teams in. If they don't get them in, what other conference is going to sneak in a team over the SEC? You're not going to get 2 group of 5 teams, so you can cancel that out, right? The Big 12 is most likely not going to happen because you have no one that's undefeated from there anymore. Colorado just lost to Kansas, who's 4-6 or 5-6 now. You have BYU, who lost again to Arizona State, so Arizona State could get in. Whoever wins the conference will get a automatic win. So you're talking about like an Arizona State team, I think it's 9-2. If they win out, then they can be 10-2, maybe 11-2 if they win the Big 12. But you're not putting 2 Big 12 teams in there. The only other option that you started to see from the odds is the ACC. And who's the team they're talking about from the ACC? It's Clemson. If Clemson can win out, they would have a good shot at getting in. But here's the thing. If that same team that you've been propping up saying that you're going to win, if they win, they could potentially be in. If they lose, then the team they lose to would theoretically be just as deserving, and that's South Carolina. So there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to go over. I think that there is a lot at stake, like I said, and that's great. Like, that's huge. It's what you want to be in this time of year. We'll get to more of that, and we will also talk to you about more things that are going to be at stake with Clemson. A little bit of a preview on some of the game. We'll get into just breaking down like the ins and outs of them, and then go over some stuff over the last couple of weeks that we have missed thanks to Spectrum Internet. But make sure you stay tuned. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right, welcome back into Locked On Gamecocks. Before we get started, I do want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel, and I want to tell you that you need to get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and win $150 in bonus bets if you win the $5 bet. All you have to do is go sign up, be a new user, place a $5 bet, win that $5 bet, and when you do win it, it's too many wins, you get $150 in bonus bets after you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, we'll take these glasses off and clean them up while we're doing this ad read. You get a hunch in the middle of a game, and you want to go check out to get the most latest and up-to-date information so you can be as accurate as you can be, predicting what you think will happen and placing your own hard-earned money on it. You can view live play-by-play as well, and so much more in the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's get back into the Clemson, South Carolina talk and start kind of just previewing some of the stuff that's at stake here. We talked about earlier, college football playoff at stake, all the in-state battles for recruits, bragging rights, all the above. Here's one thing, too, I think that is interesting. Cole Kubick tweeted this out earlier today, which is this is the first time you have a ranked-on-ranked matchup in this rivalry game since 2013. In those games, there's been 6 of them all time where South Carolina's been ranked and Clemson's been ranked. 6 of them all time. Clemson is 1-5 in those games. South Carolina has owned that little segment and that portion of the series. Now, what do you have to look for in here? Listen, I hate to say it, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Cade Klubnik's been pretty good. He's been pretty good. So when you start talking about some of the things that you need to do to win, Phil Maffa has been fine to over 1,000 yards this year, 8 touchdowns, 181 carries. So you're talking about just over 5.2 yards per carry. That's more than Rocket Sanders, even though he has more carries. Rocket Sanders has 821 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground. But Cade Klubnik's been pretty good. Like he has been pretty good. Listen, on the season, he's about 67%, 2,761 yards passing, 29 passing touchdowns, which was shocking to me, to only 4 interceptions. Now, it's also a team that has, if we're being honest, not played the most difficult strength of schedule. You look at some of the games they've had. Now, they have played games. Oh, my gosh, UConn came back. They have played a lot of games against, decent opponents. But when you talk about teams that are bowl eligible and things like that, fine. But when you talk about teams that are also playing for a playoff spot like Georgia played Clemson. We saw that win. It was a 34-3 beatdown. Outside of that, who have they played? Think about the schedule. Who else have they played? It hasn't been anybody great, right? Just going through what they've done this season, Georgia, they beat the brakes off App State, who's bad, NC State, who's bad. Stanford's horrible at Florida State. I don't know if any of those teams have a winning record. NC State does, but maybe barely. At Wake Forest, Virginia, Louisville, Virginia Tech, at Pitt, the Citadel. Not really a murderer's row of a schedule. Pitt at one point was pretty good. They were undefeated. They were 7-0. Now they're 7-3. I don't know what happened to them this weekend. They have to be 7-4. NC State is 5-6. Wake Forest 4-7. Stanford 3-8. Florida State 2-9. Guys, that's your entire first month of the season. Virginia has a losing record. Pitt is 7-4. Louisville is 7-4. You got Virginia and Louisville at home. Virginia Tech 5-6. So Pitt, Louisville, I don't know about App State, and Georgia seem to be the only teams that you have played this season with a winning record. Never thought I would say this, but you avoided Syracuse, who's 8-3. You avoided Duke, who's 8-3. You've played nobody. Again, call a spade a spade. You've played nobody. South Carolina is one of the more battle-tested teams in the country. And that is not just saying it because it's the team we cover. It's the team that y'all are fans of. We're all pulling for this weekend. Not trying to be biased. Not trying to be any of that. It's just, again, call a spade a spade. Strength of schedule this season, South Carolina is 12th. Strength of record, 14. Game control, 8. Top 10 game control. Outside of Alabama, that's ahead of every other team that's in front of them in the strength of schedule. Georgia's is 9th. South Carolina ranks ahead of them in game control. A top 15 strength of record is really, really impressive. You start scrolling down the list and looking at Clemson. What does Clemson have? Like the strength of schedule that they have played, and really a lot of teams outside the SEC, but the strength of schedule that they have played this season is 57th. Again, there's 2 teams they've beaten with a winning record. That's horrible. That's horrible. So I think that one of the strengths coming into this game for South Carolina is you are battle tested. You are ready to go. That there's times in the SEC where I think that you cannibalize yourself and you kind of put yourself in positions where you get beat up and it's a more physical game and all that kind of stuff. And that can be true. Like from an injury standpoint, you're not going to be 100% going into the last game of the season. But you're not going to be 100% going to the last game of the season for any season, in pretty much any sport. The one thing that Carolina has in their back pocket is that they have spent this entire year playing a schedule that has been unbelievably difficult. One of the toughest ones they played in the past several years. You're still at a spot where you're 8-3, potentially going to go 9-3. And all you've done is continuously rise above all of the obstacles, all the adversity, all those things. And also not just rise above, but soar above any of the expectations that go along with that. Clemson, for the first time in a long time, feels like they're actually taking this game seriously. And I think that's good because it's going to hurt worse when they lose. On game day, Dabo Swinney has 2 national championships. He's been to several more. He is a really good head coach 5 years ago. One of the best 5 years ago. I don't think he's that anymore. Dan Mullen was a really good coach 5 years ago. Didn't win a national title, but this game in this day and age of football, this is going to sound harsh, but it's true, has passed by Dabo Swinney. He's not cut out for it. He's just not. And wait till next year when you have roster limitations with 105, you can't have walk-ons. He can still recruit, sure. But the NIL portion of it, the transfer portal portion of it, it's passed him by. And on Saturday, he is going to get a huge dose of all the things that he's against beating him in his own stadium, on his own field, in front of his very eyes. And that's just as plain and simple as I can be. Kyle Kennard is a transfer. Rocket Sanders is a transfer. You think about all the impact players that this team has on it that would have never been given a chance to play at a place like Clemson. Shane Beamer has done a phenomenal job navigating the waters of all the things that are new and a must see, I would say must use, but must adapt to portion of this game of college football. Dabo hasn't done that. And one of the things that has stood in his way more than anything is something I'm going to tell you after the break. Oh, it's a tease. It's a tease. All right. Make sure you're staying tuned for that. It'll be our last portion of the show, and we will get out of here on this fine Monday, start of Thanksgiving week. Hope you guys are having a fantastic week as well. All right, back with the final portion of today's show. And before we get into it, I want to tell you about our friends at the Game Time app. You guys have heard me brag about these guys before. A phenomenal user experience. And I tell you what, all you have to do, go over to the Game Time app, download the app, and then use the code LOCKEDONCollege, right? Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. One of the reasons I love Game Time app is it's not just for games. You can have concerts, comedy, theater, what have you. We talked about this last week. Maybe you're going to a Christmas cantata. If you are, please tell me in the DMs or in the comments or in the comments on YouTube what the hell a cantata is. But either way, have a great time, and I get some great tickets with the Game Time app. It's the official cantata app of Christmas. No, they don't know that yet. I did make that up. But go to Game Time, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your first purchase. They have all these really, really cool uses and just different parts of the platform that no other ticketing platform has. And I'm talking about things like priority game time picks. Curation makes it a lot easier to save on going to more games for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. They have all-in pricing. You can toggle over in this feature, and it'll show you your total price up front. So there's no surprise fees, no hidden fees, and nothing else you get to check out. Just your total price up front, so you know before you start clicking through to get your tickets the total price it's going to be. And then last but not least, they have seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Whether you're going to the game at Clemson this weekend, whether you're going to a basketball game at Colonial Life sometime soon, or whether you're going to a cantata, I don't know. They have panoramic views of your seat from outside of the venue before you get inside of the venue using the Game Time app. Again, all you have to do is download the Game Time app, create a code, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's close this out with one quick thing about one of the things I feel best about South Carolina beating Clemson this weekend. And it's not how great Lenore Sellers has been. It's not how great the defense has been. It's not how opportunistic the defense has been. It's not how much better the offensive line has played, right? Talk about Sellers. Going into this past weekend, the offensive line giving up 1 sack in their last 3 games. Sellers, after this week, 17 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions in his last, I think, 5 games. Like, this team has turned a corner. We saw it happening. We kept talking about it over and over again, but we saw it happen over since the A&M game. We saw it happen in the second half of the Alabama game. And just ever since then, this team has been truly different. But the thing that makes me feel more confident than anything else about why South Carolina can beat Clemson this weekend, it's Dabo Swinney's pride. I think that this is a guy who would rather go down with the ship because he would rather argue about where the leak is coming from than actually keep the ship afloat. I truly believe that. I think that he is so petty. I think he's so prideful. And I think he is so stuck in his ways because if we're being fair, the way that he built the program is better than that program has ever been. It's better than a lot of programs have been in the last 10, 15 years. There's not a lot of teams and not a lot of programs that would want to trade places with Clemson that wouldn't want to trade places with Clemson over the last 10 to 15 years. Georgia and Bama are really the only two that are on their level in terms of winning national titles, the consistency, and all that kind of stuff. Like, they have been a great program. But here's the deal. They're not anymore. They're good, but you can see all of the flaws that have happened over the last couple of years and all the flaws facing this team and facing the coaching staff and the things that there's things that have naturally fallen off, right? Like, I've said this forever on our podcast that Clemson is not going to be a team that like at some point the generational talent has to fall off and you're not going to have the same level of play at certain positions. You've seen it at Alabama this year in the last couple of years at receiver, quarterback, offensive line. You're not getting the same types of players. Listen, you're not going to sign Jerry Jeudy and Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle every year, right? That's why you've seen, Ryan Williams has been great, but who's behind him, right? Offensive line, same thing. Clemson, you had a streak where you had Taj Boyd winning as quarterback in like ACC history. Then you follow that up with Deshaun Watson. Then you follow that up with Trevor Lawrence. You followed that up with DJU, who was the number 1 ranked quarterback in the country, and fell off the hill. Fell off so quickly and so badly. And Cade Klubnik's a high-ranked recruit. Had a great season. He's not like those other guys. He's not a generational quarterback. So you've had things like that. Another thing that Clemson has never done, ever, is develop or recruit well on the offensive line. The amount of 5 stars that Clemson has signed since Dabo has been the head coach, you can count on one hand, and you wouldn't get to every single extremity on your finger or your hands. I don't know medical terms. It's not like they have never done that. They've signed a ton of great receivers, a ton of great linebackers and defensive backs and athletes and quarterbacks and running backs and all that. Not on the offensive line. And one of the reasons they haven't had to is because they play in the ACC, and it doesn't matter if you have a 3-star or a 4-star instead of a 5-star. It doesn't. You're not going up against 5-star DNs constantly every single week, week in and week out, or future first-round draft picks. You're just not. But the other part of that is that this is a program that has been prideful ever since they started, ever since Danny Ford won in 1981. But they sat there in the doldrums for a long time, and then Dabo Swinney came out, and they were great. They were great. That all ended in 2020, and they've been a shell of themselves ever since. And they're a good football team this year. They have a great defense, and they've got some pieces in place. Like I love Matt Luke as the offensive line coach. But Dabo Swinney's pride about the portal, about doing the things his way and not anyone else's way, have been what has caught up with this program. At the very least, it's what is costing them games in this day and age of football. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I just don't. All right, that's today's episode. I'm hoping that the internet is better since we were down here at a beautiful Spring Hill Suites by Marriott in Tampa for Thanksgiving vacation. I hope all of you have been well. I'm sorry about the last couple of weeks, but we got a show coming out today at least. We'll have one every day this week, even on Thanksgiving. I can promise you that. Love you guys. Hope you have a fantastic afternoon, fantastic night. Be safe wherever you are. If you're traveling for the holidays, please be safe. Please be safe. We want as many people to enjoy what's going to happen on Saturday as possible. Until tomorrow's episode, thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, maybe go give my buddy Chris Gordy a listen. Lend an ear to him. He does a great job with Locked On SEC as well. His internet works all the time. So there you go. Love you guys. Have a great day. Go Cox. We'll see you all tomorrow.